Chosen one. Stop everything. Heaven has pressed pause on the noise around you, not by accident, but by divine arrangement. You are here because a message has been carved for you in eternity, and now it must be delivered into your spirit. You are not one among millions, lost in the crowd. You are a marked soul, seen, known, and appointed. I want you to picture this because I know you've felt it before. You're standing in the middle of life's busy street, people rushing by, each with their own plans, and yet you feel that invisible hand pressing gently but firmly on your shoulder. It's not a stranger's touch, it's the pull of heaven, the whisper you've been ignoring, the feeling that there's more for you than the routine you've been surviving. There's a story I once heard about a young woman named Eliana. She was the quiet one in every room, the dependable one for everyone else. Yet secretly, she was drowning in the silence of her own heart. She waited for years, through unanswered prayers, through nights when her pillow felt heavier than her own chest, through days when she thought maybe she was forgotten. But she was not forgotten. God was using that season of waiting to prepare her for a moment where her voice would carry healing to hundreds. She didn't know it then, but the weight she carried was actually her training. And so it is with you. Every tear, every silent prayer, every unanswered question, it has been counted. You've mistaken the waiting for abandonment, but heaven calls it preparation. The enemy has whispered to you that you're late, that you've missed it. But I'm here to tell you, you are exactly on time in God's calendar. The ancient words recorded in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 1, declare, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." Do you hear it? These are not the words of a distant God, but of the one who saw you before your first breath. These words are not generic. They have your name written into them. They are heaven's handwriting over your life. I don't care how dark the last season was. The sun is still scheduled to rise for you. I don't care how many said you couldn't. Heaven's vote outweighs them all. I don't care how deep the pit has been. There is a rope from heaven being lowered right now, and it has your name embroidered into it. Chosen one. I need you to know something. There are divine assignments hanging in the balance of your next yes. This is why you've been fought so fiercely. This is why the attacks seemed personal, because they were. Darkness recognized you long before you recognized yourself. And now, you are standing at the threshold of a new chapter. I'm not here to flatter you. I'm here to wake you. You have survived storms, not because you're lucky, but because you're necessary. Necessary for the people you've yet to meet. Necessary for the chains you've yet to break. Necessary for the generations that will look back and say, if they hadn't stood their ground, we wouldn't be free today. Your presence disrupts the plans of the enemy. Your very survival is a victory that confuses hell. And your obedience in this next season will not just bless you, it will spill over into everyone connected to you. So, here's what I'm asking, not as a content creator, not as a stranger on a screen, but as a messenger sent for you. If this word is already touching something deep inside you, pause for a moment. Acknowledge it. Let heaven know you've heard it. And if you feel led, show agreement in the simplest ways. Share this so it reaches the other chosen ones. Leave a comment as your prophetic act. Subscribe so the next word meets you on time. This isn't about numbers. It's about staying aligned when heaven is speaking. And if you're reading this right now with your heart racing a little faster, with tears you didn't plan on shedding, it's because something in your spirit recognizes home in these words. That's the evidence. You are not here by chance. You are here because your next step matters more than you realize. Now, take a deep breath. Let the noise fade. Hear it again. Heaven has pressed pause for you. Not for anyone else. For you. And when heaven calls your name like this, it is never just for comfort. It is a summons to rise, to move, and to step into the story already written for you before time began. You were set apart long before your first cry filled the air. You were not designed to blend in, to simply exist among the crowd. The fingerprints of heaven were pressed into your soul before your name was ever spoken by human lips. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is reality, as eternal as the one who made you. I remember the story of a man named Nathaniel. He worked quietly in the background of life, unseen by most, underestimated by nearly all. He lived in a small fishing village where nothing remarkable seemed to happen. Yet, without his knowing, the patterns of his life were being woven into something greater. One day, while mending his fishing nets, a stranger stopped and spoke to him words that pierced his core. "I saw you before you were even under that fig tree." Those words dismantled the ordinary world he thought he knew. Suddenly, he realized his life was not random. It had been watched, known, and prepared. You are no different. Every season you've walked through, whether bitter cold or warm, with blessing has been part of a divine choreography. You have been set apart like a single golden thread woven into a tapestry of thousands. Your color, unlike any other. That thread may disappear among the others for a time. But when the tapestry is held to the light, your thread catches the sun first. As revealed in the scroll of Exodus, chapter 19, verse 5. "Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession." Do you feel the weight of those words? My treasured possession. Not just your face, not just your voice, but the exact composition of your heart, the way it would break over injustice, the way it would burn with longing for truth, the way it would still choose to believe after being wounded. Being set apart doesn't mean you will always understand the journey. Sometimes it feels like being pulled out of the river while everyone else is allowed to drift together downstream. You stand on the bank, watching them disappear, wondering why you were removed. You don't realize yet that the one who pulled you out has a boat waiting, a vessel to take you upriver toward the source, toward the beginning, toward the place others will need you to return from, with fresh water. Think of a rare seed locked away in a vault, protected from the changing seasons, while other seeds are sown quickly into the soil, growing fast but fading in the same sun. This rare seed is preserved, guarded, and only planted in the perfect season. That's you, hidden for a time, but destined to bear fruit that will outlast the storms. Nathaniel never asked to be seen that day. You might not have asked for the weight of being chosen, but here it is, the mark on your life that cannot be erased. It will explain why certain doors closed without reason, why some people left, why opportunities you thought were yours slipped away. These were not accidents, they were divine edits, cutting out scenes that would have pulled your story off its true path. And here's the truth, few are willing to tell you. Being set apart will often make you feel misunderstood, People will see your present and judge it without knowing your future. They will call you too much or not enough. Without realizing, you are being measured by a different standard, one set in heaven. But if you could see the way your name is written in heaven's records, etched not in ink, but in light, you would never again question your worth. That mark is why you can walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without saying a word. It's why certain places feel too small for you. Why your spirit aches when you're surrounded by things that don't align with your purpose. This is the burden and the beauty of being set apart. You will never be able to live comfortably in the shadows. You were made to be a flame, and a flame cannot be hidden. It either burns or dies. So, let this truth settle in you. You have always been known, always been seen, always been chosen, even when you didn't see it. The master potter was shaping you, turning the clay of your life over and over, pressing his fingerprints deep so that when others see you, they see the touch of the one who made you. And when the day comes, and it will, when your name is called into the light, you will understand why the waiting was necessary, why the hiding was mercy, and why being set apart was the highest honor you could have been given. Every tear you've cried has been noticed, stored, and remembered. None have been wasted. You might think the silence of heaven means the absence of care, but it is in the stillness that God has been writing the next lines of your story. I once knew of a man named Ezra who walked through a year where everything seemed to break at once. His work collapsed. His friends grew distant, and his health failed in ways that made even breathing feel like labor. He told me later that he began to count his days in size instead of hours. He wondered if God had lost his file in the endless archive of heaven, but he was wrong. One night, as he sat in his small kitchen, the light above flickering, he whispered, "Do you still see me?" That same night, a stranger he had never met left a letter in his mailbox with no name on it. Inside, only one sentence was written: "Your tears are liquid prayers." Ezra said he wept harder than he had in months. But this time, it was not in despair, it was in relief. He knew then none of his pain had evaporated unnoticed. According to what is revealed in the book of Psalms, chapter 56, verse 8, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." Think about that for a moment. Every tear you have shed was collected, like a priceless gem placed in a crystal jar. No raindrop of your sorrow has been lost to the ground. It has been preserved as evidence, evidence that you endured, evidence that you kept faith, even when the night pressed hard against your chest. Imagine an artist mixing paint for a masterpiece. The colors are not taken from easy moments alone. He stirs in the deep blues of grief, the heavy grays of waiting, the crimson of anger, the gold of hope. Every shade has its place on the canvas of your life. Without the darker colors, the brilliance of the lighter tones would never shine as brightly. This is why the enemy tries to convince you that your tears mean you are weak. He wants you to believe they are wasted, that they drain your strength. But in heaven's reality, every tear has weight. Every tear is an investment toward your victory. Like seeds watered in the night, they will one day rise into a harvest of joy. I need you to hear this. You are not forgotten, not for a day, not for a breath. You are remembered in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Heaven's memory of you is sharper than your own memory of yourself. The book written about your life is not collecting dust. Its pages are still being filled by the author who never sleeps. One day, you will look back and see that the seasons you thought were full of silence were actually full of God's careful writing. You will see that the pain you thought was emptying you was actually carving space for something greater to pour in. There's a place in heaven where the jars of collected tears are kept, and I believe when those jars are poured out, they will not spill as grief, but as light. Every moment you thought you lost will return to you, transformed. So, if this word is striking something deep in your heart, I want you to write this in the comments right now. I am seen. Say it in writing, because sometimes the act of declaring it shifts the ground beneath you. You've been fed the lie that you are invisible, that your suffering has slipped past God's notice. By typing, I am seen, you are not just agreeing with me, you are breaking that lie's power. You are planting a flag in the ground of truth and saying, my life is known in heaven, and I will live like it. 1. And when you type it, imagine that those very words are being written alongside your name in that book where every tear is recorded. Imagine heaven nodding in agreement, saying, yes, they finally see what we have always known. 1. Your tears are not the end of your story. They are the ink God has chosen to write your comeback with. And when that chapter turns, the world will not see someone who simply survived. They will see someone who was refined, strengthened, and radiant. The tears are proof you have loved deeply, believed fiercely, and refused to let the darkness steal your light. And the one who holds the bottle, holding those tears, is the same one who will place a crown on your head. The weight you've carried has shaped you in ways that comfort never could. You may not realize it, but every heavy step has been a form of training, like a soldier marching uphill with unseen armor strapped to their back. The world saw struggle, but heaven saw preparation. I remember the story of a man named Corin. He was the type of person everyone relied on, yet no one thought to ask if he was okay. For years, he carried the burdens of his family, his community, even strangers. When his shoulders ached and his spirit felt crushed, he would walk out to the edge of a quiet pier at night. He told me later that the dark water became his confidant. He would watch the ripples under the moonlight and imagine each one as a problem leaving his grasp. But the truth was, the weight never left it, simply sank deeper into him. Then one winter, an unexpected storm swept through his town. Roads flooded, power lines snapped, and people panicked. Corin, without thinking twice, waded into the rising water to rescue an elderly neighbor trapped in her home. As he carried her out, waist deep in freezing water, she whispered, "You were made for this." It was in that moment he realized something. The years of carrying invisible weights had built the muscle to carry visible ones when it mattered most. As the prophet wrote in the scroll of Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 19, "The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights." Oh, that is the paradox of your journey. What felt like crushing was actually conditioning. What seemed like endless heaviness was actually heaven, fitting you for higher ground. The weight was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to build in you a strength that ordinary paths could never require. Think of a mountain climber in training. They strap weights to their legs, climb with extra load, and push themselves beyond comfort. At first, the weight feels unfair, even unbearable. But when the real climb comes, They find their legs strong enough to carry them where others collapse. Your burdens have been those weights. The nights you thought you would not survive were the uphill sprints in the dark. The days when you carried more than your share were the altitude tests that taught your spirit how to breathe thinner air. And now, without realizing it, you have become someone who can stand where others fall. You can walk into chaos and carry peace. You can face storms and find a path through the water. You can endure words that would have crushed someone else because you've already been through battles far worse than what they see. Corin once told me that after the storm, he stopped wishing the weight away. He understood now that the weight had been his teacher. It taught him endurance, sharpened his instincts, and gave him a calm others leaned on when fear was loud. You, too, will see the purpose in what you've carried. The very things you thought were breaking, you have been shaping your spine into something unbendable. You are not fragile glass, you are tempered steel. One day, the people around you will wonder how you move so confidently in the face of pressure. They won't know it's because you've walked with pressure as a constant companion for years. They won't know the private moments where you carried loads that would have shattered them. But heaven knows. And heaven is the one who equipped you to carry it. So even now, if the weight feels unfair, pause and see it through heaven's eyes. A builder never leaves a beam untested before it holds a roof. A musician never plays before their fingers have learned the tension of the strings. And a soul destined to carry light into dark places must first learn to bear the heat of the flame without flinching. Perhaps this is why your path has been so different from others. You weren't made to walk the valley floor forever. You were made to climb. And the higher the climb, the more critical the preparation. Others may run ahead on the flat ground, laughing, thinking you are behind. But they will tire long before the slope begins. While you quietly trained under weight will find your stride. The day will come when you stand on the heights you were born for. Look back at the path and realize every step under that burden was worth it. Darkness knows your name, not because you sought it out, but because the light you carry is dangerous to it. You may not realize this, but your very existence in certain spaces causes the plans of the enemy to falter. There's a reason you've been fought in ways that feel personal, because they are. I once met a woman named Sarah who always felt a strange resistance whenever she tried to step into anything meaningful. Every new job opportunity mysteriously closed. Every attempt to build friendships ended in sudden distance. And even her health seemed to collapse whenever she made progress. For years, she believed it was just bad luck. But when she finally began to walk closely with God, she saw the pattern clearly. Every time she stepped toward her calling, opposition intensified. It's like being a lighthouse in the middle of a stormy sea. Ships can see you from miles away, but so can the pirates. Light doesn't just attract the lost. It also exposes those who thrive in darkness. That's why you've been targeted. Your light unmasks what darkness would rather keep hidden. The voice of God thundered in the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, verse 17. No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. Understand this. Knowing your name is not the same as owning your destiny. The enemy can recognize the mark of God on you, but he cannot erase it. He can throw distractions, delays, and discouragements your way, but he cannot cancel what heaven has decreed. Think of a wildfire in a dense forest. It doesn't matter if the flames are small at first. The animals still scatter because they know what's coming. In the same way, even the early spark of your obedience causes spiritual opposition to react. Hell doesn't wait until you are fully ablaze to attack. It tries to snuff you out before the flames can grow. But here's the truth. Sarah learned, resistance is proof of impact. The heavier the pushback, the greater the threat you pose to the enemy's plans. She stopped interpreting attacks as signs she was failing. Instead, she saw them as confirmation. She was on the right track. And I want you to know, your story carries that same evidence. If you have been feeling like the battles are intensifying, it's not because you are weaker, it's because you are stepping closer to the place God destined you to stand. Now, this is where I want to be honest with you, not as a content creator, but as someone who deeply cares that this message reaches those who need it. If what you've been hearing has been awakening something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, so another light can be lit. Like this message, so the algorithms carry it to the ones still searching. Subscribe, so you don't miss the next word that could arrive exactly when you need it most. And yes, if God stirs you to donate or sow into this work, whether through prayer or financial support, know that it goes beyond keeping a channel alive. It's fueling a mission to reach the chosen ones scattered in every corner. You're not just consuming words here, you're part of a movement. Every like is a signal boost in the digital battlefield. Every share is a torch passed into another's hands. Every donation is like adding oil to a lamp, so it burns through the night. And remember, these small actions are not small in impact. When you like, you're helping plant this message in the soil of countless hearts. When you share, you're sending a lifeline to someone who might be silently crying out for a sign. When you subscribe, you're keeping yourself aligned with future words that could shift your entire path. And when you donate, you are investing in eternal work, fueling the voice that carries light into the darkest corners. Together, these acts build a chain that darkness cannot break, linking chosen ones across nations in one unshakable mission. I told Sarah once that her life reminded me of an ancient watchtower built high on a cliff, battered by wind and waves, yet still standing century after century. She laughed, but I could see in her eyes that she understood. The storms were loud because her position mattered. You may not have realized it yet, but you're standing in a watchtower too, and the fact that darkness knows your name should not make you afraid. It should make you alert, because it means you are not wandering aimlessly. You are on the map, and heaven has already surrounded you with a defense no weapon can breach. So, lift your head. The storm is proof of the shore you're guarding, and every moment you keep your light burning, you are undoing the works of darkness in ways you won't fully see until eternity. You stand at a gate, not just any gate, but the kind that doesn't open by accident. This is the moment where two paths lie before you, one that looks familiar and safe, and another that feels uncertain yet alive with possibility. You've been here before in smaller ways, but never at a threshold like this. I once knew a man named Elias who lived much of his life waiting for the right time. Opportunities would pass him by because he wanted all the signs to be perfect before he acted. One day, after years of hesitation, he stood in front of an old, weathered gate on his family's land. He remembered how, as a child, he had been too afraid to open it, certain that monsters lurked on the other side. Now, decades later, he pushed it open and found a meadow of wildflowers beautiful and unclaimed. It had been there all along. The only barrier was his fear. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Haggai. Chapter 2, verse 9. The glory of this present house will be greater than the glory of the former house, declares the Lord Almighty. And in this place I will grant peace. That's the promise of the gate you stand before. The other side holds a glory greater than what you've left behind. But you won't see it until you step through. Picture a key turning in a lock. The tumblers click. The mechanism releases. But the door still won't open unless you put your hand on it and push. God can arrange the alignment, but He won't force the step. That part is yours. The air at this threshold feels heavy because destiny always carries weight. This is why you've been feeling a mix of excitement and resistance. It's the same tension an arrow feels before it's released. The pull backward is not meant to hold you down, but to launch you farther than you've ever gone. Elias told me later that his biggest regret wasn't the years of waiting. It was realizing how much beauty he could have enjoyed sooner if he had trusted what lay beyond the gate. That's what I don't want for you. This is your moment to step forward while the way is open. I believe there are specific seasons when heaven aligns circumstances like puzzle pieces falling into place. Miss that window, and the pieces scatter. You may still reach the same destination eventually, but the path will be longer and harder. Right now, you are in one of those rare alignments. The gate is before you. The key is in your hand, and heaven is watching to see if you'll move. I want you to do something prophetic right now. Type 888 in the comments. 8 is the number of new beginnings, and 888 declares a complete and overflowing reset. By typing it, you're not just leaving a comment, you're putting a spiritual marker on this moment in your own story, saying, "This is when I chose to step through." 1. The power is not in the digits themselves, but in the act of aligning your heart and will with what God is setting before you. Every time you see that number after today, it will remind you that you once stood at the gate and decided to move forward. The truth is, fear will try to negotiate with you here. It will whisper, "Wait for more signs. Wait until you're stronger. Wait until the path is clearer." But gates rarely swing open forever. At some point, they close again. And you weren't given the key to admire it, you were given it to enter. So, take a breath. Put your hand on the latch. Remember the promise of Haggai, that what is ahead will outshine what is behind, and let that truth be heavier than your hesitation. Because one day, you'll look back and see this moment as the turning point, the chapter where you stopped circling and finally crossed into what was meant for you all along. And when you step through, you'll realize the gate was never the real barrier. It was your own belief about what lay beyond. The field waiting for you is wider than you imagined. The sky above it clearer. The air warmer. You'll see that all along. The resistance you felt was proof of the value on the other side. So walk forward, without glancing back. The echo of the latch closing behind you is not loss. It's the sound of a chapter sealing, ensuring you never wander back into what you were freed from. And as your feet touch this new ground, you'll feel it. The alignment, the peace, and the quiet but undeniable joy of knowing you obeyed at the right time. The enemy's last attempt often comes when you are closest to break through. It's a desperate, reckless strike, not because you are weak, but because you are almost out of his reach. Like a cornered predator, his movements grow more erratic, less predictable, but far more aggressive. I remember hearing about a man named Judah who had been preparing to launch a project he believed God had placed in his heart. For months, things aligned with unusual favor, doors opened without effort, resources appeared from unexpected places, and people he never met before offered help. Then, in the final week before the launch, everything seemed to fall apart. The person funding the project backed out. His computer was stolen. A close friend betrayed him. It felt like the ground had shifted under his feet, and the momentum he had built was collapsing. But as Judah prayed, he sensed a quiet nudge in his spirit. The storm is loud because the shore is near. The ancient words recorded in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verset 11 declare, I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have, so that no one will take your crown. That verse became Judah's anchor. It reminded him that this sudden chaos was not a sign to retreat. It was proof he was carrying something worth stealing. The enemy doesn't waste energy on empty hands. Think of a sprinter in the final stretch of a race. Their legs burn. Their lungs scream for air. But they push harder because the finish line is in sight. The crowd roars. And in that noise, it's easy to lose focus. But the wise runner locks eyes on the line ahead, refusing to be distracted by anything else. In the same way, when you are near the end of a long, difficult journey, the noise around you will grow. Distractions will multiply. The attacks will become oddly personal, designed to touch your most tender wounds. It's not coincidence, it's strategy. Judah told me later that the week of chaos forced him to choose between holding tightly to his purpose or letting fear and frustration dismantle everything. He decided to hold on, and just 3 days after the betrayal, someone else stepped forward to provide exactly what had been lost, plus more. The launch went ahead, and the impact was greater than he had imagined. Sometimes the final attack is not about stopping you completely, it's about delaying you long enough for doubt to take root. Delay can be as dangerous as defeat if it convinces you to abandon the mission. Picture a ship leaving harbor. The enemy might know he cannot sink it once. It's in open water. But if he can entangle the ropes or jam the anchor just as it's about to depart, he can hold it in place long enough for the tide to change. Your calling is that ship. And right now, you may be feeling the enemy tugging at the ropes. But the verse in Revelation stands firm. Hold on. That crown is not a mere decoration, it is the mark of completion. The proof that you endured to the end. It is the recognition from heaven that you carried what you were given and did not drop it in the heat of battle. You may feel tired, worn thin from the constant strain, but there is a deeper strength within you than you realize. It's the strength forged in every earlier season when you chose to keep going despite the odds. That same strength is here now, ready to carry you through this final push. The enemy's last attempt is his loudest, but it is also his shortest. Storms lose their power when they cannot break what they batter. And you, chosen one, have been built to outlast this storm. So fix your eyes on the finish. Guard the crown that is already being prepared for you. And remember, if the battle is this fierce at the edge, it's because the territory ahead of you is worth every step you've taken to reach it. And when you step into that territory, you will see why the fight was so intense. The ground will feel different under your feet, stable, almost sacred, as if it had been waiting for you, alone. You'll realize that every blow you endured, every sleepless night, every moment you wondered if you could keep going, was actually proof of how close you were. The crown you guard now will not just rest on your head, it will shine as a testimony that you did not surrender. And those who watch you cross this threshold will understand storms don't rage against empty skies, they rage against rising suns. Mercy holds the door, but not forever. Grace is an open invitation. Yet, like any doorway, it was built to close. This is not because God delights in shutting people out, but because every season has a purpose, and when its purpose is fulfilled, the season must change. I remember a woman named Miriam who carried a deep regret for years. In her 20s, she had felt a clear nudge to move to another city, to take a role that would allow her to serve in ways her heart longed for. But fear whispered all the reasons it could fail. What if she couldn't find housing? What if she didn't fit in? So she stayed, telling herself she would move when the time was right. A decade passed. The organization she was meant to join closed its doors. The opportunity that had once seemed alive with possibility was gone. She told me once, "I thought the door would always be open, but I didn't realize mercy also has a clock." As was spoken in the sacred texts of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19, "I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live." God's mercy is patient, but it is not passive. It waits, it warns, and it prompts, but it does not force. The door will not slam shut without cause, but it will eventually close when it's time for the next chapter of the story to begin. Think of a train pulling into a station. The conductor opens the doors, gives ample time for passengers to board, even calls out reminders, but at some point, the doors close, not as punishment, but because the train must move forward to its next destination. Right now, you may be standing in the station. You can feel the weight of the moment, the sense that this is more than an everyday choice. There's a quiet urgency pressing on your spirit, not with panic, but with purpose. That's mercy, holding the door long enough for you to step through, but not long enough for you to linger forever. Miriam's story is a reminder that opportunities are living things. They breathe, they grow, and they also fade if left unattended. She wasn't cast away by God, but she did have to wait years for a different, smaller opportunity to come. The delay didn't erase her calling, but it did alter the scope of what she could have done in that original season. This is why it's dangerous to confuse God's patience with endless time. His patience is meant to lead to action, not to lull us into complacency. Imagine a sunset over a vast field. The sky glows gold and rose. The air is still, and for a brief moment, everything feels timeless. But in just a few minutes, the light fades, and night takes over. The beauty wasn't meant to last forever, it was meant to be received while it was there. The same is true of certain moments in your life. They are designed with a now in mind. Step through while the light is still on you, and you carry its warmth into the next place. Wait too long, and you may still move forward, but without the same radiance. I believe there is a tenderness in God's timing. He opens doors when He knows you can walk through them, and He holds them open longer than you deserve. But His love for you also means He won't let you stand in indecision forever. Some blessings are only activated when you move. If you feel the pull to act, don't wait for perfect conditions. perfect conditions rarely come. The winds shift, the light changes, and the station must eventually empty. Mercy is holding the door for you now, not to pressure you, but to invite you into the life you were always meant to live. And when you finally cross that threshold, you'll look back and realize the waiting was never about punishing you. It was about preparing you to carry what's on the other side. You'll understand why the door felt heavy, why the decision seemed so weighty. It's because what waited beyond it was not fragile, it was sacred. And sacred things are never placed in careless hands. But you will also see that the door's closing was not loss. It was protection. Protection from staying too long in a place that could no longer grow you. Protection from the slow fade of passion that happens when opportunity is met with endless hesitation. Mercy held the door. Grace invited you through, and love will meet you there. Some moments in life feel like standing at the center of a battlefield, silent 1 second, and deafening the next. You sense that what you do here will echo far beyond this day. This is one of those moments. I once knew a young man named Caleb who was painfully aware of the tension between who he was and who he was called to be. On the outside, he seemed confident, but inside, he carried the weight of unspoken battles. There was one night when he sat alone in his car, parked at the edge of a cliff overlooking the city. Lights shimmered below like scattered stars. But all he could think about was giving up, not in life, but in the fight to keep going after what God had promised him. Just then, his phone buzzed. A friend had sent a single verse, with no other words attached. As the Apostle reminds us in his letter to the Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Caleb read it over and over. It didn't erase the pain, but it lit something in him, a stubborn ember that refused to be put out. He realized then that his weariness was not a sign he was failing, but a sign he was close to breakthrough. Weariness often hits hardest right before the finish line. It's like the final few steps of a marathon, when your body screams for you to stop. The temptation isn't to run backward, it's simply to stop moving altogether. And that's the danger. I want you to hear this. The enemy doesn't have to destroy you to win. He only has to convince you to stop. If he can make you freeze, the momentum dies. The harvest waits unclaimed. And the people connected to your obedience are left without the blessing they were meant to receive through you. Caleb chose that night to drive home, sleep, and try again the next day. He told me later that it wasn't the grand victories that defined his journey, it was the hundreds of small yes decisions when quitting seemed easier. So here's what I want you to declare in the comments. I keep going. And it's only 3 simple words, but they carry the weight of your refusal to stop. When you write them, you are not just speaking to the present moment, you are speaking into your future. You're saying to every fear, every disappointment, every attack that has tried to slow you down, I am still here, and I will keep moving. By typing, I keep going, you create a line in the sand between you and giving up. It's a reminder you can return to the next time the road feels too long, and each time your eyes meet those words, you'll remember that quitting is no longer an option. You may be tired. You may even feel numb. But endurance is not about feeling strong. It's about choosing to stay the course, even when strength feels absent. Like a lighthouse battered by waves, you remain because your presence matters to those navigating the dark. And here's the truth. Every I keep going written today will echo into someone else's story tomorrow. Because when they see that you refuse to quit, they'll be reminded that they can refuse too. Your journey is not defined by the battles you fought, but by the fact that you're still standing after them. And each time you endure, you're not just surviving, you're advancing. The ground you hold now becomes the foundation for the next victory. So take one more step, whisper one more prayer, breathe one more breath of faith. The harvest is closer than you think, and when you look back months from now, you'll see that this single choice to keep going was the hinge that turned the door of your destiny. You will remember the heaviness you felt today, and you will smile, knowing that you didn't let it anchor you in place. Every step forward, no matter how small, will have built a bridge to where you are meant to be. I keep going will no longer be just something you typed. It will be the rhythm of your heartbeat, the cadence of your days. It will echo in the way you speak to others, in the way you face your own trials, in the way you rise each morning with quiet resolve. And there will be a moment when someone else stands where you are now, looking for a reason to move forward. And you will hand them these words like a torch, and in their hands, the fire will spread. You're not here by accident. Every turn, every delay, every detour that made no sense at the time has been part of a precise route heaven charted for you. Even the things that looked like mistakes have been repurposed into stepping stones. I once met a man named Levi who spent years feeling like his life was a series of wrong turns. He had tried 3 different careers, lived in 5 cities, and endured more disappointments than he could count. It feels like I've been wandering in circles, he told me. But when we sat down and traced his story, we noticed something. Every place he had been, every skill he had learned, every person he had met was now part of the exact work he was doing. We find in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28, and we know that, in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. It's like a master weaver working at a loom. From up close, all you see are random threads crossing at odd angles. But step back, and the pattern comes into view. What felt like chaos was actually design. Levi said, "If I had skipped any of those so-called detours, I wouldn't be ready for what I'm doing now." The very seasons he once resented had been his training ground. That's why you can be confident you're not lost. You're being led. And sometimes the most meaningful destinations are reached by the longest routes, because that's where you gain the strength, resilience, and wisdom to stay once you arrive. Now, if this truth is stirring something in you, I need to say this with sincerity. When you like a message like this, you help keep the light visible for others still searching in the dark. When you share it, you place hope directly in someone's hands. When you subscribe, you make sure you stay connected to the words meant for your exact season. And when you donate or sow into this work, you're not just supporting content, you're helping sustain a mission that is actively finding and equipping other chosen ones around the world. I can't overstate this. Your engagement isn't just about numbers. It's about reach. It's about making sure these words don't stay hidden in a corner, but find the people who need them most. Every click, every share, every seed sown is like adding another lamp to a dark path. I told Levi that his life reminded me of a mosaic made from broken tiles. Up close, you only see jagged edges and mismatched colors. But as you step back, The image reveals itself a portrait of something beautiful that could never have been made without each individual piece. And you are that mosaic. Your broken pieces are not wasted. They've been arranged by the hands of the one who sees the whole picture from the beginning. The fact that you're here, reading these words, means the story isn't over. It means that what once felt like fragments is about to take shape, and when it does, others will be drawn to it, not because it's flawless, but because it's real. So take courage in knowing that nothing you've walked through will be wasted. The map has always been leading you here, to this moment of realization. You are exactly where you need to be to take the next step forward. And as you go, remember, others are watching your journey for clues on how to navigate their own. Your faith, your endurance, your willingness to keep walking might just be the sign someone else is praying for tonight. And when you take that step forward, you'll begin to see the threads of your life connect in ways you never imagined. People you met years ago will reappear at the right moment. Skills you learned in seasons you thought were wasted will suddenly become essential tools. Even the pain you endured will turn into language that others understand, because it speaks directly to their wounds. You'll realize that God's leading was never about efficiency, it was about preparation. He was building a foundation deep enough to hold the weight of what's coming. If the path had been shorter, the roots would have been shallow. But because it has been long, you are anchored. And one day, when someone asks you how you got here, you'll smile and tell them the truth. Every road, every turn, every delay was worth it, because they all led home. And as you rest in that truth, you'll understand, home was never just a place. It was the moment your spirit recognized you were exactly where you were meant to be. The voice in the fire is not always loud. Sometimes it is barely more than a whisper, yet it carries enough weight to shift the course of your life. You hear it not with your ears, but deep in the marrow of your being. I remember a man named Jonah, not the prophet in Scripture, but a modern-day craftsman who worked with glass. He once told me about a furnace he used daily. Inside, the flames roared at temperatures that could melt stone, and yet, when he leaned close, he swore he could hear something beneath the roar, a faint, steady hum, like a song hidden under the heat. That sound guided him in knowing when the glass was ready to be shaped. Jonah's words reminded me that God often speaks in the middle of our most intense seasons. The fire may surround you, the heat may be overwhelming, but within that very place, His voice is clearest if you're willing to listen. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 66, verse 10. For you, God, tested us, you refined us like silver. Refining is never comfortable. Silver must be heated until the impurities rise to the surface, where they can be skimmed away. The craftsman watches carefully, not to destroy the silver, but to make it pure enough to reflect His image. Your trials are the furnace. The heat you feel is not meant to consume you, it's meant to bring the hidden things to the surface. The voice you hear in the fire isn't telling you the flames will stop immediately, it's reminding you that they have purpose. I once sat with a friend who was going through one of the most difficult seasons of her life. She said, "It feels like God is silent." But as she spoke, I noticed her eyes soften. Although, she added, "When I'm quiet enough, I feel something, like He's with me, even here." That is the paradox of the fire it burns. Yet it holds the presence of the one who keeps you from being consumed. Think of a forest after a wildfire. The ground is blackened, the air heavy with ash. But if you look closely, you'll see green shoots breaking through the soil. The fire, while devastating, has cleared away what was choking new life. In time, the forest returns stronger. The same happens in your life. The voice in the fire is the assurance that what is being removed was never meant to stay. It's the promise that you'll emerge, not just intact, but transformed. Jonah told me that when he hears that hum in the furnace, he knows it's time to shape the glass. Too soon, and it shatters. Too late, and it hardens beyond use. The timing is everything. God's voice works the same way. It guides you in the exact moment you're ready for the shaping that will define you. If you're in the fire now, pay attention, not to the flames, but to the stillness within them. The fire is not the end, it's the place where your next form is decided. And when you step out of it, you will not look like you did before. You will be clearer, stronger, and able to reflect the light in ways you couldn't have imagined. People will see you and think the fire destroyed you, but you'll know the truth, it forged you. And when you look back, you'll see that the fire was not random, it was custom built for your transformation. You'll notice how certain fears that once chained you no longer have a grip. You'll realize that the impatience that used to make you rush ahead has been replaced by a steady patience that waits for God's timing. The fire has a way of stripping away everything you thought you needed, but didn't, leaving only what is unshakable. And it is there in that stripped-down place that you finally see yourself as God sees you. Not fragile, naught, unfinished, but ready. Jonah once showed me a piece of glass he had shaped after a long day in the furnace. It was smooth, strong, and glimmered in the light like water frozen in motion. This, he said, couldn't have existed without the fire. The fire didn't ruin it, it gave it form. I know, so it is with you. The seasons that felt like they might consume you were actually the seasons shaping you into something that could carry more light than before. And the hum you heard in the middle of it, that was heaven's way of telling you, you're almost ready. Hold steady. End of. There are moments when heaven's timing feels like it runs on a different clock entirely. You've prayed, prepared, and positioned yourself. Yet the moment you expect God to move, there's still silence. But then, just when you've stopped watching the clock, everything shifts at once. I knew a woman named Sailor who had been waiting for years to see a promise fulfilled. She had planted seeds in her work, in her relationships, in her faith, and for a long time, it felt like nothing was growing. Then one morning, a single email arrived that changed the entire trajectory of her life. It wasn't just an opportunity, it was the opportunity she had prayed for. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 44. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Sailor told me she realized something that day. God's timing is never rushed and never late, but it's rarely predictable. It's like standing in a harbor with your ship anchored offshore. You know it's coming in, but you don't get to control the tide that carries it to you. This is why readiness matters as much as faith. If you're not prepared when the moment comes, the tide will still turn, but you may not be able to board. Think of a photographer waiting for the perfect shot of a rare bird. They sit for hours, motionless, camera ready, knowing that when the bird appears, it will only be for seconds. In those seconds, they either capture it or miss it. Sela's long wait had prepared her for that exact moment. Because she was ready, she could respond instantly. No hesitation, no scrambling, just a steady yes to what she had been waiting for. I believe you may be in that same position, now closer than you realize to the moment when the tide shifts in your favor. And when it does, your preparation will turn into acceleration. So I want you to do something prophetic. Type 555 in the comments. 5 is the number of grace, and 555 is a declaration that grace is not just present, it's overflowing. By writing 555, you're marking your readiness to step into what God is about to release, acknowledging that His timing is perfect, even if it's unexpected. It's more than a number, it's a posture of the heart. It says, I am ready when you say, go. I will move when the tide turns. I will not be caught unprepared. Now, some will miss their moment because they insist on controlling it. They'll try to force the gate open before it's time or delay after it swings wide. But those who stay watchful, like the photographer with the camera, will be ready when heaven signals. Now. Sela's story didn't end with that one email. It was only the beginning. That single moment of obedience opened a chain of doors she hadn't even known existed. And it happened because she lived ready, not anxious, not passive, but steady. You don't have to know the exact hour of your moment. You only have to be in position when it comes. The rest is in God's hands. And His hands are never too early, never too late, but always right on time. And here's what I've learned about heaven's timing. It doesn't just change your circumstances. It changes you. The waiting season has already been shaping your vision, training your reflexes, and teaching you how to hear the faint signals that others miss. When the moment comes, it will feel like the world has tilted in your direction. Conversations will happen that you didn't arrange. Doors will open without you touching them. The right people will show up without you calling. And you will know, without a shred of doubt, that this is the hour you were waiting for. But there's another truth. Once the moment arrives, it rarely lingers. Like morning dew, it shines brightest in the early light, but fades if left untouched. That's why God doesn't just give you the promise. He builds in you the ability to recognize it and the courage to act on it instantly. When you step into that moment, it will feel strangely familiar, like walking into a room you've never seen yet, somehow already know. That's because heaven has been rehearsing it with you in your spirit for years. And in that instant, everything in you will rise to meet it, not because you are lucky, but because you are ready. The marked ones rise quietly at first. There is no fanfare, no loud announcement, just a steady emergence from places where they've been hidden, refined, and prepared. They are not the ones who sought the spotlight, yet when they step forward, the atmosphere shifts. I once met a man named Aaron who spent most of his life unnoticed. He worked in a small repair shop, fixing watches and clocks with delicate precision. To anyone else, it was ordinary work. But I noticed something when I visited his workshop. On the wall behind his counter was a row of pocket watches, each stopped at a different time. When I asked about them, Aaron smiled. These belonged to people who carried them through the most important moments of their lives. Each one stopped right after something significant happened, some at weddings, others at births, others at the passing of someone they loved. I keep them here as reminders that time has a way of marking us. Just as we mark it. No, according to what is revealed in the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 17. They will be mine, says the Lord Almighty. In the day when I make up my treasured possession, I will spare them, just as a father has compassion and spares his son who serves him. No, Aaron's words stayed with me. The marked ones are like those watches. They carry the evidence of moments that have shaped them, not in a way that breaks them, but in a way that sets them apart. Being marked is not always visible to the world. Sometimes it's carried in the way a person speaks with quiet authority, or in the way they can stand in chaos and still radiate peace. Sometimes it's in the scars they don't hide, because they know those scars are proof of survival. Think of a tree in the middle of a field, its bark scarred by storms and seasons. To the untrained eye, those scars might seem like damage, but to a forester, they are proof the tree has endured and is stronger for it. The marked ones are the same. What others see as damage is actually proof they can withstand what's ahead. Aaron once showed me a watch from his collection that had a dent on its case. It was dropped during a bombing raid. He explained. The man carrying it survived. The dent is ugly to some, but to me, it's beautiful. It means the watch did its job. The marked ones rise because they have been tested and proven. Their lives are evidence that what was meant to destroy them only confirmed their purpose. And when they step into the place God has been preparing, they don't come empty-handed. They carry wisdom, resilience, and a weight of presence that cannot be faked. The rising may look sudden to the world, but it is never sudden to heaven. The preparation has been long, often hidden from view. And now, the moment comes when the marks they carry are no longer signs of past pain. They are credentials of readiness. When the marked ones rise, they don't need to announce themselves. The fruit of their endurance speaks louder than any introduction. And perhaps that is the most striking thing about the marked ones. They are not defined by what they escaped, but by who they became through it. Their identity is not rooted in the battles themselves, but in the transformation those battles brought. They have learned the discipline of silence, the strength of patience, and the courage to act when others hesitate. They have learned that their worth is not determined by applause or recognition, but by the quiet affirmation of the one who marked them. Like the watches in Aaron's shop, they hold time differently. They are not rushed by the urgency of the world, because they move in sync with a higher rhythm. They understand that each moment has a purpose, and they are willing to wait for the one that has been prepared for them. When they finally rise, it is not to prove themselves, but to serve the purpose that has been shaping them all along. And in doing so, they become living reminders to the world. Scars can be beautiful. Endurance is powerful. And those who are marked by heaven carry a light that no shadow can extinguish. And that light is not fragile. It has been tempered in storms, shielded in seasons of darkness, and fanned into flame by the very winds meant to extinguish it. When the marked ones rise, the world does not just see survivors. It witnesses carriers of something eternal, a presence that speaks without words and shifts the atmosphere without effort. When heaven arms you, it rarely looks the way you expect. You may imagine shining armor, an impressive sword, or a loud declaration of power. But more often, the weapons God places in your hands are subtle discernment, peace under pressure, unshakable conviction, and words that carry weight far beyond their volume. I once knew a nurse named Esther who worked in a small, rural clinic. She told me about a night when a storm knocked out the power, leaving the whole facility in darkness. Several patients were in critical condition, and panic was spreading. She had no flashlight, no backup generator, just a single oil lamp she kept in her locker for reasons she couldn't explain. As she lit it and carried it from room to room, she noticed how the flame didn't just illuminate it, calmed. People's voices softened. Fear loosened its grip, and even the other staff began to steady themselves. Later, she told me, that night, I realized my lamp wasn't just light, it was a weapon against fear. And the ancient words recorded in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 4 declare, "The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. And when heaven arms you, it's not for show, it's for impact." Esther's oil lamp was small in the world's eyes, but it was exactly what the moment required. The same is true in your life. You may overlook what you carry because it feels ordinary, but in the right moment, that ordinary will dismantle something the enemy thought was unbreakable. Think of a locksmith's key. It may be tiny compared to the door it opens, but when it meets the right lock, it changes everything. The gifts God has given you, your patience, your ability to listen, your habit of speaking life into others, may seem small until they meet the exact situation they were designed for. Then they become unstoppable. Esther told me she began to see her role differently after that night. She stopped waiting for a big assignment and started treating every moment as a potential battlefield where she was already equipped. The more she leaned into that perspective, the more she noticed opportunities to use what was in her hands. You may not feel armed right now, but that's only because you're measuring your tools by the world's standards. Heaven measures differently. Heaven arms you for effectiveness, not appearance. And when the time comes, you will find that what you thought was insufficient is exactly enough. Not because it's flashy or overwhelming, but because it's backed by divine power. And that power doesn't just defend, it advances, breaks chains, and changes atmospheres. The truth is, God never sends you into a battle empty-handed. The only question is whether you recognize the weapon He has already placed in your hand. And here's what I've noticed about the way heaven arms you. It's rarely a sudden event. It's a process. Often so gradual, you don't realize it's happening. One day you wake up and discover that the patience you once lacked is now unshakable. That the compassion you thought was a weakness has become a bridge to reach those no one else can touch. Sometimes, the weapon is perspective. The enemy thrives on confusion. But when you see clearly, you dismantle half his strategy. Other times, the weapon is endurance. While others burn out quickly, you keep showing up, and that consistency becomes a blow he cannot counter. There are also seasons when the weapon is simply presence, the kind that shifts the room without a word. It's the way a seasoned soldier can walk into a camp and bring order, not by shouting commands, but because everyone can sense they have been through battles and survived. Esther once reflected, "I used to think I had to pray for God to give me more. Now I realize He already gave me what I need. I just have to use it." That shift in thinking transformed the way she faced challenges. You may be in a season where you're tempted to ask for a different weapon, a louder voice, a stronger platform. more resources. But what if the very thing you've been overlooking is the exact instrument heaven intends to use? When that moment comes, and it will, you will understand why you were given this instead of something else. And you'll realize that heaven never arms you for battles you won't fight. It arms you for the very war you were born to win. Some messages are not just meant to be heard, they are meant to be carried. And when you carry them, they don't stop with you, they move through you, reaching others you may never meet in person. That is how the kingdom advances, one life igniting another. I remember meeting a man named Daniel who worked in an old lighthouse. For decades, he kept the flame burning. Even when storms battered the coast and visibility was low, it's not about who sees the light, he told me. It's about knowing it's there when someone needs it. Daniel's light saved ships he never saw and lives he never knew by name. According to the book of Proverbs, chapter 11, verse 25, a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. That's how it works. With what you carry, it refreshes others. And in the process, it refreshes you. Every word of encouragement you share, every truth you pass along, every time you help someone see their worth, you're tending a flame that may be the only light someone else sees tonight. And here's the truth. In this digital age, tending the flame often means making sure the light travels far. When you like a message like this, you keep the flame visible in a sea of noise. When you share it, you're placing the light into another person's hands. When you comment, you're adding your voice to a chorus that drowns out despair. When you subscribe, you're choosing to stay close to the fire so you're ready for the next word meant for you. And when you donate or sow into this work, you're not just fueling a message, you're helping keep the light burning for others still lost at sea. Daniel didn't light the lamp for applause. He lit it because that was his assignment. In the same way, you're not called to shine only for those who notice. You're called to shine because the world needs the light you've been given. Think of a chain reaction of candles. One flame touches another, then another, until the entire room glows. None of the candles fight to be the brightest, they simply give what they've received. That's the invitation for you today, to keep the flame alive, not just for yourself, but for those who have yet to find their way. And here's the beauty, you may never fully know the impact of your light on this side of eternity, but one day, in heaven's presence, you'll see the ripple effect. You'll meet the lives touched because you chose to keep the flame burning, to pass it on, to let it travel beyond you. So guard what you've been given, tend the fire in your hands, and keep it visible, because somewhere out there, a ship is searching for the shore, and your light may be the one it finds. And perhaps the most extraordinary thing about the light you tend is that it never truly belongs to you. It's entrusted to you for a season, to be passed on in its time. That's why the smallest act of keeping it alive matters so much. You never know when your light will become the turning point for someone else's midnight. Daniel told me there were nights when he wondered if the ships even noticed the lighthouse. But then, every so often, a letter would arrive from a captain, thanking him for keeping the beam steady during a storm they could barely survive. That's when I realized. Daniel said, "You don't tend the light for constant feedback. You tend it because one day, someone's life will depend on it. When in your own way, you are a keeper of the flame. The storms you've weathered have made you reliable. The nights you've stayed awake in prayer have made you watchful. And the light you carry is not fragile, it's been tested, refined, and proven to endure. One day, you may stand face to face with someone who will say, "I found my way because of you," and in that moment, you'll understand it was never just about your own survival. It was about becoming a beacon others could trust, even from miles away. And as you look back over the nights you kept the light burning, you'll see that those were not wasted hours, they were sacred ones. They were the moments heaven trusted you with visibility for others. And in the ledger of eternity, those quiet, faithful acts will shine brighter than any spotlight. Because in the end, the measure of a life is not how loud it was, but how much light it left behind. Your crown does not appear all at once. It is not delivered in a box, tied with a ribbon, on the day you feel ready. Instead, it is forged over years, shaped by obedience, tempered by trials, and polished by the moments when you chose faith over fear. I once met a woman named Miriam who had spent decades serving in places no one else wanted to go. She worked in remote villages, taught children who had no books, and cared for the sick with whatever supplies she could find. There were no headlines about her, no awards, no speeches in her honor, but there was a weight to her presence, a quiet authority that made people stop and listen when she spoke. One day, as she sat outside her small home at sunset, she told me, "I used to dream of a crown as something beautiful I'd wear someday. But now I know it's not about the gold or the jewels. It's about the life that becomes the crown." Then, it is written in the first letter of Peter, chapter 5, verse 4, "And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that will never fade away." Miriam explained that every act of obedience, every moment of endurance, was like placing another piece into the crown's design. Some were moments no one saw, prayers whispered in the dark, forgiveness offered when it wasn't deserved, choosing integrity when compromise would have been easier. She told me about a time when a shipment of medicine she desperately needed was delayed for weeks. She walked miles each day to check the delivery point, only to return empty-handed. Those were the days, she said, when I realized the crown isn't given for the days you succeed. It's given for the days you keep going, even when nothing works. End quote. The crown of life is not fragile. It is built to withstand the weight of eternity, because it represents a life lived in alignment with heaven's values, unlike earthly crowns, which tarnish or can be taken away. This crown only grows more radiant over time. Think of a tree that produces fruit year after year. Its beauty is not just in the harvest, it's in the rings hidden within its trunk, each one marking a season survived. The crown is like those rings. It carries the record of every season you endured and every choice you made to stand firm. When Miriam finally retired from her work, she had no earthly riches to show, but those who knew her saw something greater, a light in her eyes, a steadiness in her step, a joy that couldn't be shaken. That was her crown, and it was already visible to those with eyes to see. The truth is, your crown may not be placed on your head in this life, but its shape is forming now. Every trial you endure with faith adds to its beauty. Every act of obedience, no matter how small, is a gem set into its band. And one day, when you stand in the presence of the one who called you, that crown will be placed on your head, not as a decoration, but as a declaration: you lived well, You finished the race. You kept the faith. And when that moment comes, it will not be rushed. The King himself will place it upon your head with hands that once bore the nails. You will feel the weight, not of gold, but of every moment you chose to trust him when you couldn't see the way. Every tear you shed in secret. Every yes you gave when no one applauded. Every act of faith you thought went unnoticed will be remembered in that instant. Miriam once told me she imagined it like walking into a great hall where countless others stand, each crowned, each shining with the story of a life lived in surrender. The beauty, she said, is not in comparing the crowns, it's in knowing each one was forged perfectly for the person wearing it. MC, and perhaps in that moment, you will finally understand that the crown was never just about honor, it was about intimacy. It was his way of saying, I saw you, I knew you, I am proud of you. MC, the crown will not fade, and neither will the memory of the one who gave it, or the love that made you worthy to receive it. And as you stand there, crowned and complete, you will realize that every step, every wound, and every victory was leading to this embrace. The journey will make sense in a way it never did before, and you will know, beyond any shadow of doubt, that the path was worth it because it led you home to the one who called you by name. There is a moment at the end of every race when the runner sees the finish line. The body may be weary, the muscles aching, but something rises within a final surge of strength, drawn not from reserves of the body, but from the pull of what lies ahead. I once spoke with an elderly pastor named Samuel who had served his small community for more than 60 years. He told me about the day he realized he was nearing the end of his earthly race. I wasn't sad, he said. It felt like sailing toward a familiar shore I had only seen from a distance. End. The ancient words in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 1 remind us, Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. End. Samuel described his life as a series of seasons, each with its own trials, victories, and lessons. In his youth, he chased opportunities with vigor. In middle age, he carried heavy responsibilities that tested his faith. And in his later years, he discovered the beauty of simply walking closely with God without striving for recognition. He compared it to a river's journey. At its source in the mountains, the river is swift and wild, tumbling over rocks and carving new paths. As it flows into the plains, it widens and slows, nourishing the land along its banks. Finally, it reaches the ocean, not with a crash, but with a quiet joining, its waters becoming part of something vast and eternal. That's what finishing feels like, Samuel said. It's not about collapsing at the end, it's about merging with the one who's been guiding you all along. End quote. The closing chapters of your life are not a decline, they are an approach. They are the drawing nearer to the place where faith becomes sight, where hope becomes reality, and where love is no longer something you trust in the unseen, but something you behold face to face. I think of Samuel's final sermon, preached just months before he passed. He spoke without notes, his voice steady, though his body was frail. He told the congregation, "The greatest reward is not the applause at the end, it's seeing the face of the one who never left your side." End quote. And when his time came, those who were with him said, His final moments were marked by peace, as if he were stepping from one room into another, the door closing gently behind him. The race you run now is leading somewhere real, and when you arrive, the finish line will not be the end, it will be the doorway into the fullness of everything you were promised. And when that door closes behind you, you will not feel loss, you will feel completion. The unfinished sentences of your life will suddenly make sense. Each pause and delay falling into place like pieces of a pattern you could not see before. The questions that kept you awake at night will dissolve, not because you found every answer, but because you've stepped into the presence of the one who is the answer. Samuel once told me that eternity will not erase our memories of this life. Rather, it will heal them. We will look back and see how every moment, both the joyful and the painful, was woven into a tapestry we could only see from the wrong side while we were here. In heaven's light, the knots and loose threads will reveal themselves as part of a design too beautiful for our limited vision. Perhaps the greatest surprise will be the welcome. Samuel imagined it like walking into a great hall where familiar voices cheer. Not because you were perfect, but because you finished. The great cloud of witnesses will not greet you as a stranger. They will recognize you as one who kept running, even when the path was hard and the night was long. And there, in that place, every step you took on weary legs, every prayer you whispered through tears, every act of obedience that cost you something will stand as proof. You ran your race well. The crown will be placed on your head. The joy will flood your soul, and the journey will be complete, not in the sense of ending, but in the sense of arriving at the true beginning. And in that first breath of eternity, you will know you were never running alone. Every mile, every wound, every triumph was shared with the one who ran beside you from the first step. And now, in his presence, the race is over, and the real life, the everlasting one, has begun. The journey we've walked together in these words has not been a coincidence. Every story, every scripture, every image was a reminder you were born for more, and you are walking towards something eternal. But this isn't the end. This is a passing of the torch, just like a flame that grows when it's shared. The truth you've received here is meant to go further than your own heart. Somewhere out there, someone is in the middle of their night, looking for a light. When you like this message, you help keep that light visible in the crowded noise of this world. When you share it, you carry it to someone who may need it more than you know. When you comment, even a few heartfelt words, you add your voice to a living testimony that faith still stands. When you subscribe, you make a choice to keep walking in this stream of truth, so you don't miss the next word meant for you. And when you donate or sow into this work, you place more oil into the lamp, ensuring it keeps burning for those still searching for the shore. You are part of this story now. The flame in your hands is real. Tend it well. Let it shine. And trust that the same God who brought you here will guide you forward step by step until the day you stand before him. Crown in place. Heart at peace. Joy complete.